for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is Carl O. Helvie. And he was on my show recently, and the poor man did a whole entire hour with me. And through my fault, I evidently had thought that I had called into my extra Skype account, and I hadn't. And what happened was, after the show was over, I hit the play button on it to test it, and it was just blank, nothing there. And I've asked him, and he has graciously agreed to come back and do a redo on this. Let everybody know real quick, like, the call-in number, if y'all choose to call in, is 832-632-7904. And also want to let everybody know that I have recently joined up with Revolution Radio. And what I'm doing is I'm continuing to broadcast Wednesday nights at 7, Saturdays at 1, right here at Talk Now Radio. You still come to my webpage and click on the player, get in the chat room. However, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Central, I will have a slot available to Revolution Radio, and I will be broadcasting over on their server, and it's going to be a 2-hour segment each time. I did my first one this last Thursday that just passed us, and the people over there just loved it. So, folks, that's Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com every Thursday at 1 to 3 Central Time, 2 to 4 Eastern Time. And I don't have the whole time slot schedule in front of me to give it to you for Mountain and Pacific, but that's usually an hour behind Central and 2 hours behind Central. So, with having said that, if y'all would like to learn a little bit more about Carl and his book, his website is www.beatlungcancer.net, and you can get a link to his book from there. And you can also scroll down beneath the chat room. You'll see his picture in his book cover, link to his website, and below that you'll see a link to his book on Amazon. I would encourage y'all to click there to buy it if you can, because I do get a commission for that, and naturally those little commissions is, well, part of what keeps Talk Now Radio on the air, plus any donations I get on the donation meter over to the right. This show is listener supported, so is Revolution Radio. Basically, that means that we're not obligated to any sponsors to, refrain from broadcasting anything. The whole choice is clearly up to us, and we can bring you information that a lot of mainstream channels cannot bring you, because a lot of sponsors just say, well, we don't like to talk about that, or we don't like to throw our money out to cover that, and, that sort of thing. We don't have that kind of restriction as long as you, the listener, keep us going. So, Carl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And, Royce, as I was listening, I was thinking, and the drug companies certainly don't want to throw any money out when we talk about natural ways to deal with cancer, because they don't make any money if it's natural, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the pharmaceutical companies would say, well, I'm going to pull out my sponsorship if you're going to air that. I mean, it'd be detrimental to their cause.
Right. Yep.
Now, this book you got, it covers a lot of different ways. I mean, as far as holistic herbs and spiritual, the whole 9 yards for dealing with cancer?
Right. I have my story, and I used a very holistic approach, physical, mental, spiritual, because I believe that the mental and the spiritual are just as important as the herbs and the diet and all of that. And then I have chapters by Dr. Bernie Siegel, who talks about the mind-body connection, and that's very important in cancer treatment. And I have a chapter by Dr. James Forsyth, who is having fantastic results. For example, he is having, with stage 4 cancer patients, 5-year survival. He's having 46% for all cancer patients. And that doesn't maybe sound like much, but when you compare that with how much the traditional physicians for 5-year survival, stage 4 cancer patients, they have about 2 to 3% survival. So, I mean, he's having fantastic results. And he uses herbs and homeopathic substances and things like that. And then I have another chapter by Dr. Francisco Contreras, who has treated over 100,000 cancer patients at the Oasis of Hope in Mexico, and also now at a branch in California. And he uses high-dose vitamin C, he uses insulin potentiation, and he uses a variety of other modalities. And then I have a chapter by Dr. Kim Dazzle on nutrition, because this is so important in cancer, and a chapter by Tanya Harder-Pierce on the use of protocells. So I have a variety of natural interventions that people can use, and we can talk about any of these if you want, but I just wanted to say that it's not just what I use, but an overview of what different physicians and nutritionists and all are using for cancer.
Well, one of the things you said that I couldn't help but notice, because I've heard it said of Near Eastern religions, Hindu teachings, Buddha teachings, and some of the others, is about the care for the mind, body, and soul, the whole, picture, in other words. Because, here in America, or in the Western civilization, the only thing they treat is the body itself.
Right. And that disturbs me very much. In fact, my own doctor, who was very progressive, considering it was 39 years ago, and if I tell you, the treatment that he gave me, most of it has been proved as scientific fact by this point, but he only gave me the physical. Any doctor I go to will just give me the physical aspects, and yet I think that prayer and meditation and visualization and affirmations and a strong faith, the research shows that these will prevent diseases, they will shorten a length of hospitalization and all kinds of things when one has faith and they are optimistic in some of the things that are not physical. And so the doctors are very slow to catch on to some of these things, and I think they're even slow to catch on to things like the alternatives that are very effective. I was on a television program on PBS maybe 3 months ago, and I was the person that talked about alternative, but there was a surgeon, there was an oncology physician, and a thoracic physician, and I mentioned to them Cancer Control Society, and they'd never heard of it, and yet the Cancer Control Society just celebrated their 43rd annual convention, and it's an alternative cancer organization. It's been in business 43 years. They'd never heard of it. They also, and I don't know, maybe they were pulling my leg, but they also didn't think that nutrition had any influence on cancer. And yet there is so much research that shows that it will prevent and also is an aspect of treatment. So you're right. They look at the physical and they order usually drugs, and that's it.
Yeah, it seems like standardized surgery or drugs, and okay, there are some things they say, eat well, get plenty of exercise, but even then, unless you go to a nutritionist, they don't give you anything in depth as far as the nutrition value goes.
No, they don't. Or they'll refer you maybe to physical therapy for that type of activity. But, Royce, I wonder sometimes how many people listen to their doctor, even when they're just looking at the physical aspects, believe what they say, and then end up debilitated for the rest of their life. I'm thinking back of one situation where I injured my back. I went through the steroids. My back was still a problem. They referred me to a physical therapist. I did physical therapy. I get finished. The therapist said, well, I'm finished. I said, but I still have pain in my back. Oh, she said, that's arthritis. You'll have that the rest of your life. I said, but I didn't have this 6 months ago. I don't expect to have this 6 months from now. I don't accept that this is arthritis, and I will have this the rest of my life. So I prayed about it, and I watched my dreams, and I was directed to a chiropractor. Well, guess what? The chiropractor took care of the pain, and that was 20-some years ago. I've never had pain since in my back. So I figured if I had listened to the physical therapist, I'd have been hobbling around the rest of my life with this back pain that I would say was, oh, it's just arthritis. But I didn't listen. You know, I took my health in my own hands. And I think that people often have to take their own health in their own hands. And that's what I did when I had lung cancer. You know, the doctor came in and said, we're going to do surgery and we're going to do chemotherapy. And I said, wait a minute. I don't make snap decisions. I'm going home. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to ask for guidance. I'm going to make a rational decision, and I may or I may not be back. And I decided to do all natural things, you know, and they had told me, well, you'll be dead in 6 months. And I said, well, it's my life, my responsibility to make the decision. Your responsibility is to give me the pros and cons of surgery and chemotherapy, and my responsibility is to make the decision. So, you know, I think people have to take the responsibility for their own health and make their decisions and not let the doctor make the decision or force them into things that don't prove to be in the best interest of the patient.
Well, yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, after all, who's going to live with the end product if not the patient themselves? The doctor ain't.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to live with it, I want to have some say in it.
Right.
I mean, take me, for example. As you know, I'm in the third stages of emphysema, and you've been in medicine long enough to know yourself that they tell you there is no cure, and all they do for emphysema patients is offer to do a lung transplant, offer to take out part of a lung, and shoot breathing things into you. You know, you can inhale cortisones and what have you, and be on oxygen. That's pretty much it. They just relieve the symptoms, in other words, nothing else.
Right, definitely.
Well, hey, there's obviously not a cure in that. The doctors already admitted they can't cure. I obviously need their temporary relief unless I do find something else. If I choose not to look, then I choose to stay right where I'm at and get worse steadily. If I choose, on the other hand, to continue with the treatment I got, since it is helping in the moment with the symptoms, but continue to look for other means, then I may or may not get lucky and find something that can help.
You know, you said that doctors treat symptoms, and I agree. I think there's 3 levels of practitioners. There are those who treat symptoms, and that's primarily the traditional physicians. There are those who look for the underlying cause and give you something to deal with the underlying cause. And then there is a 3rd level who identify the underlying cause and then work with the body so that it resolves the problem. And those two are different. And, you know, I've gone through this many times, but right now I'm going through something called auricular fibrillation. Before Christmas, my pulse went irregular, and it was very frightening. I mean, I'm 81 years old. I've never had anything like that. There's no history of heart problems in my family. So the first night, I just went to bed and I prayed and I said, God, if you want me, I'm ready to go. And if I'm here in the morning and my pulse is normal, then I know that you have more work for me. And so in the morning, my pulse was normal, and I got up, and a week or so later, it went irregular again. And so I thought, well, I better go in the hospital and have them check. And so right off, they, put a diagnosis and wanted to treat the symptoms, so they told me. And again, the other thing that traditional often does is give you a scare. They use a scare tactic. And so they said to me, I said to them, well, I don't mind dying. And they said, but you could end up having a stroke and end up in a nursing home. Well, that's scary, right? And so they told me I needed to go on beta blockers and blood thinners. And I said, well, okay, I will do this if you agree to work with me, because I said, all you're doing is dealing with the symptoms. But I said, I will contact other people, and I will find out what is causing this. And once I find out what's causing it and how to deal with it, then I'm going to want to come off these drugs. And the doctor suggests he would work with me. So I consulted a medical intuitive, and I'm in the process of finding I have a naturopathic doctor, but I haven't gotten an appointment yet with her. But the medical intuitive told me that the problem was that I had mold in my body, and that when I was taking more iodine, it was keeping the mold in check. But then when I reduced the iodine, that started causing the mold to create this irregular pulse periodically. And he told me what to take for it, and so I took it, and I haven't finished, but I haven't had an episode for 11 days. So he would be in that middle group that told me what to take, but in a way, it also is correcting the problem in the body to stop that, right? So I see that there's the 3 levels of practitioners that are working, and some, I hope we reach the point in our society where they will find the underlying problem and deal with the problem so that the body resolves it. And, by resolving, I mean it might be a matter of stimulating the thyroid in some way to stimulate it to produce the
hormones or chemicals
that it needs, right? Yeah, for that whole endocrine system. Yeah, and so I see that as the ideal practitioner in the future.
Yeah, it would be a lot more ideal than what we got now. I mean, so much of the time today, I think there's a real lack of a concentrated effort to actually find cures for anything simply because there's no profit margin in it. I mean, I wouldn't say they go out of their way to, cheat the public per se, but where's the motivation to actually strive either? Right.
Well, it's like the treatments that I had for cancer. I think they cost me about $150 a month. Well,
that's pretty outlandish, isn't it?
Right. That was for the whole treatment. Well, now this blood thinner I'm on, it's costing me over $200 a month just for the blood thinner.
Oh, I know. I mean, they wanted me to pay $200 a month just for the stuff to put in my nebulizer to inhale to keep my bronchial tubes up. I only make $1,500 a month between me and my wife. I can't pay out $200 and pay all my bills too.
Right. And as you say, it's all about money.
Well, that's the sad thing. There's so much greed, especially in the Western world, that the care for the human being is it's diminishing in importance across the board.
Right.
And, I even think I'd be willing to give people, doctors and people higher up, the benefit of the doubt, even if you read material that says you shouldn't. I'd still be willing, out of the generosity of my heart, to say that there's no intentional thing going on here. It's just, everyday life, the way things are done. People are in a rut, and I'd be willing to go that far, but that still wouldn't change the end product.
No, right. No.
So, yeah, and it's a pretty scary thing for the people like you and me that are struggling to get by day to day and get sick. So,
right.
yeah, the practitioner like you're talking about would be an ideal thing. And I do know that there are some out there, there's like a handful, that chemical drugs would be like a last resort. They prefer to change your diet to, boost up a vitamin that's in one food over another to help your body, or they want to recommend some kind of natural supplement, and let's face it, you go to any GNC, you can get these $200 pills, the natural equivalent of them for $20, $30 max?
Right. Yep.
And then sometimes if you're lucky, they'll do a better job. I mean, you don't get a guarantee, but hey, the doctor's not giving you a guarantee either.
No.
The minute you become sick, you don't have a guarantee. And, more and more researchers today are starting to learn that your usual causes of illness are poor diet, stress, and attitude.
Right.
Attitudes can lead to stress, in other words.
Right.
Let's face it, you think that those are what causes so many malfunctions in the body, well, then those would be the things you need to be correcting more than just dumping medicine in to get rid of symptoms. I mean, the only real medicine I've seen that seems to be effective for anything is antibiotics.
Right, and that's, I think, when medicine started going down the wrong path is, well, it's not, I don't blame just medicine either. I blame the public, because the public does not want to spend time changing their lifestyle. As I say, I'm 81. I've never had a problem before except for the cancer, which I overcome 39 years ago. But I think that anyone can live till their 80s and the 90s free of pain and all of that if they want to change their lifestyle. But most people want a quick fix. And antibiotics was a quick fix for some of the acute illnesses, and so people, want a quick fix, and that's where fast foods came along. People they decided they wanted a fast meal. They don't want to spend time preparing, because I remember my mother used to cook on a wood stove in the winter months and on a kerosene stove.
That's going way back.
Right, that was back in the 30s and 40s. But we were very healthy. We grew our own fruit and vegetables, and we went to the dairy and got milk in a pail, and we went to the farmer and got eggs, and we lived very healthy, and we grew up that way. But now you've got the fast foods because the public demands this. So they ship in things from, when I go to the supermarket, there's a lot of vegetables from Mexico and Cuba and from...
Well, yeah, not just that. You're hitting a key note, if you ask me, in my opinion, and forgive me for interrupting, please. I didn't want you to get too far away from what you were saying, where what I was about to add wouldn't line up with it, is why I did that, and I hope you can forgive me for it. But you were talking about, the difference between going to, the farmer to get your eggs and the dairy to get your milk versus today, when so much is coming from industry. They got machines now to make a cow give milk. They got a process to pasteurize it. Special feeds they give the chickens to make them lay more, make them more prompt. And the crops are dusted with chemicals to keep the bugs out. Surely the very food they're supplying has to have some contamination that can cause cancers and things in our body, don't they?
Well, I think that the most dangerous is the genetically modified foods. And, I think that it's very undemocratic that we can't have the foods labeled so we know if they're genetically modified or not, because there's been so much research done on the harmful effects. I remember back 30 years ago when there was research and they gave the rats, the rats wouldn't eat the genetically modified tomatoes, so they force-fed them, and then in about 10 days they killed the rats, and their whole intestinal tract was all abscessed. And it's because they put in Roundup and everything else in these genetically modified foods so that they don't have to weed, or they don't have to pull out weeds and all of that. And also so that people can't take advantage of the seeds from the produce to plant again. So
they're coming into a seedless age now.
Right. And so our food supply, between the pesticides that you mentioned and the genetically modified and the growth hormones, look at how teenagers are, 10 and 11, 12-year-olds are fully developed. It's the growth hormones that are, being used to make the cows grow up faster and the chickens produce more. And, it's no wonder that there is so much illness because everything is so polluted.
Yeah, I mean, that is very evident. And I'll be honest with you, it was just yesterday, the day before, I saw an article posted to Facebook that I clicked the link and read about it. They're actually using nanotechnology now inside of food to season it, to make the colors just right, and maybe even make it last longer, keep better, all of this good stuff. But this is a new technology, and they don't know what it's going to cause, and they still haven't figured out about the backlash of what their last technology is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are they really opening up another nightmare on top of us that we're still not doing right with the last nightmare?
I suspect that is what is happening, but, it's hard to get people's attention about some of these things, because people with the genetically modified foods, again and again and again, people have tried from all different points of view. And I know that California, tried to pass legislation that foods would be labeled there, and it didn't pass because the Monsanto has so much money. And then I think it was Connecticut or one of the New England states is planning to pass laws that would require food to be labeled, but Monsanto has threatened to sue the state if they go ahead with this, so I don't know where that is at this point. I do find some food that says non-GMO. For example, soy is one of the products that's most genetically modified, and for those people that take lecithin, they need to watch and make sure that the lecithin that they're taking is non-genetically modified. Because if it's not labeled that, it most likely is. Corn is another produce that is most likely genetically modified. Rice is another one that they're very soon going to be modified. So, it's getting so that a lot of our food is, but occasionally I'll find something that does say non-GMO. And the lecithin that I use says it's Lewis's, and it says non-GMO. I bought some cereal recently that was gluten-free, and it also says non-GMO organic. And so that's, I look for the organic, because I think, again, especially people that want to avoid cancer or have cancer should look for primarily organic food or locally grown food if they know the farming practices of the local farmer.
Well, actually, though, I agree with you, and it is good that they're starting to put this GMO on packages and let you know what's organic and what's not. I love that. But having said that, isn't that also the other end of the game or the other end of the trap? Because while they are doing this, the price of these organic foods that are really good for you is almost double of the stuff that has all the pesticides and that in it that ain't good for you. It's like, well, okay, we're not gonna feed you stuff that's gonna make you sick and make you pay the doctors. Here, you can buy this stuff that's good for you, and you can pay us directly a higher price for the food instead. It's all gonna go back to the same pot somewhere down the road anyway.
Mm-hmm. You know, you're very right about that, because I recently became gluten sensitive. I had never been sensitive to any food in my life, but about 2 weeks ago, and I think it has to do with this whole mold thing and all, but I became gluten sensitive. So the only thing that the medical intuitive said I could eat would be rice of the grains. He said to avoid barley, wheat, and rye, and oats. And so I figured, well, that leaves rice. And so I went looking for Rice Krispies. I remembered from years and years ago there was Rice Krispies. So I went looking. Well, guess what? The Rice Krispies now have, I mean, it's not just the Rice Krispies anymore. There was probably 3 inches of stuff that had been added to it, including all kinds of vitamins and minerals and all that stuff. Well, you know, I'm not supposed to be taking multivitamin because of the heart things that I'm taking, and so that eliminated my using that. And so when I went looking, I found Rice Krispies, but they were non-GMO, they were organic, etc., but they cost me almost $6 a box.
Oh my God, that's scary.
Right.
Lord have mercy, I swear. There's somebody up at the top of a pyramid somewhere that they get their money. I mean, in other words, I think the money goes to one central pot, whether it comes from the auto industry, the food industry, the medical industry, or whatever. It all ends up at one point that branches out into many different factions, in other words.
Right. Yep.
So it doesn't matter where they get it, they're going to get it somewhere. And again, it goes right back to who's getting all the money, and this is why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Right. But from the consumer point of view, I figure I'd rather spend $6 for the cereal and not have to worry about genetically modified foods than pay the doctor down the road.
Oh, I would too if I could afford to. Yeah. I mean, you got to have enough money to pay your lights, gas, and water, and the food. And those the people out there that don't have that kind of income, they would rather have the organic, but they just simply cannot.
Right.
And that's a sad thing. And be honest with you, Carl, from my way of thinking, I would advise anybody who can't afford to get the organic, even though it's higher, to grow your own in your backyard.
Right, definitely, yeah, and then you know what's in it.
And seeds don't cost much, and they're still selling them for now. I won't swear they'll always sell them.
Right. My problem is that I don't have the time, but also I have deer and rabbits and all kinds of wildlife roaming around my house, and they would like all of these things if I planted them, so. And I'd let them go ahead and eat them because I like all the wildlife.
I like meat as much as anybody else, and I'll eat hamburger meat you buy in the store because I love it. But I'll be honest with you, if I had the opportunity to find a cow that died of natural causes out in the pasture, and I didn't have to murder that cow and make that cow suffer, as long as I got to them in time and took them to the butcher and let him process them, I'd a whole lot rather do that than I would buy it from the market.
Yeah. See, I don't eat beef because I just don't like the idea of eating cows, but also I don't think that beef is very good. It's too hard for the system and the body to digest. So I eat some chicken and some seafood, and that's about it.
I'd rather have the chicken and leave the seafood alone.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Carl, but I mean, I used to love fish, and I used to go fishing with my Uncle Raymond all the time. And then one year when I was going to this little Baptist church down the road here, every Wednesday they had a dinner there, and Lowell Jones always brought a box of chicken from Long John Silver's instead of cooking. I guess because he worked so late, you know what I'm saying? And this one particular time, he just happened to get a batch that had soured. And I ate it, and of course it had a flavor, but fish has an unusual flavor anyway, so it's hard to tell if it's a bad one or not. And I got sick. Oh God, did I get sick. But after you've ate a fish that was sour, it's the sort of thing you just don't never want to go back and do again.
Right.
Kind of lose your appetite for fish, in other words.
Right. Well, there's also, there's health reasons why one should not eat too much fish, and that is the mercury levels. You know, the industry has dumped all of the mercury into the waters now, and the smaller fish will eat it, and then the bigger fish eat the smaller ones, and the bigger the fish, the more mercury there is in their body. And so that's one reason that I don't eat.
Well, that's not the only contaminants either, though.
No.
I mean, ships go through these waters with motors that displace carbon monoxide and other fumes, and people throw trash in there. God knows what people urinate in there. Hang it over the side of the boat, and not trying to be crude, but I'm just saying realistically, lakes and oceans are overall basically pretty nasty places, and poor fishes have to live in that environment.
Right. Well, unless you get organic chicken, you don't know where that chicken has been either and what's been done to that chicken.
That is very true. You know, I also suffer from Mycobacterium avium, and they say that's the terminology for it because it's known as disease of the bird. And they say that you mostly get it if you work with chicken and other fowl. They never figured out how me living in the city of Houston doing a tire man and a bill collector got a disease of the bird. But they said that it is known to come from birds, which makes your very point about you. There's nothing you can be 100% safe with, but you can stack the deck in your favor.
How do you do that?
Well, like some of the ways you were talking about, getting on the organic, growing your own, processing your own meat. If you do in a place where you can have a ranch, you can let process cows yourself that have died on your property, chickens that you might have that you process yourself, that you know where they've been, for example. There are ways. I mean, it's hard to do if you're in the city because there's laws about having chickens in the city, for example. But for like people in the country, it'd be easier for somebody in the country than it would somebody in the city, wouldn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Right.
So, you can stack the deck in your favor. You can move to the country. You wouldn't be breathing the same polluted air. You could, get your own garden out. You can get a bigger one because you can get big lots out in the country for less than you can in the city. You can get room for a big garden. You can get room to get you cows if you want them, or maybe beef ain't the best thing, but it's a lot better to have it out of your own pasture than it is that from the grocery store. It's still stacking the deck in your favor to some degree.
Right. Yep. Right.
But that would mean going back to a time before industry took over, and living like the farmers used to live. But maybe they had a better life. Look at the Indians. They don't have near the health problems that we have.
No. Well, I don't think we had the health problems when I was growing up either, and we didn't, as I said, we grew our own fruit and vegetables, and we got the milk and the chicken and the eggs and all, and the chicken from the farmer, and we drank unhomogenized, unpasteurized milk, which was fine. We never got sick from that. I don't remember, we went to the dentist regularly for dental care, but I don't remember going to the doctor very much, and my my brother just died. He was 91. My sister's 86, and she's in excellent health. And I've had two brothers die, but I think in general it was a much healthier lifestyle. We didn't have television, of course, because there was no television then. We had a radio, but it wasn't on very much. We didn't have telephones because no one had telephones. People just dropped in, unless people made arrangements before. And our entertainment was pretty much friends of my parents would get together and they would play cards. They might play pinochle or some kind of cards. And they always had a booby prize, and they always had the prize for the one that won the most. Square dances. They had square dances, and there was a person in the group that did the calling.
Barn raisings.
They always included the children. We were always included in the square dances and in the cards and everything else. I mean, it was a very healthy lifestyle, I think.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. And this is what gets me, is you can see articles online, you can see it's said on TV from time to time that back then or before then, there wasn't good health. People only lived to their 30s. But I don't remember a time when people only lived into their 30s. I hear about it, read about it, but I don't remember it. Do you?
No, because my mother was 84 when she died, and, she was born in 1901. And so, I don't know. They'd have to have gone back into the 1800s, I guess, because most of my aunts and uncles and all lived up until their 70s, 80s. I don't remember anyone dying at 30.
And nowadays, people are dropping in their 50s. I mean, I had a sister die in her 40s, and my brother-in-law died in his 50s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I had more than one sister die in their 40s, come to think of it. And you got to ask yourself, why are people... why are the hospitals so busy? Why are there so many sick people now? So many people on dialysis and so many people on oxygen that didn't used to be on. And let's be honest about this. People have been smoking over 300 years, but it wasn't until the last 50 years or so that you see so many people on oxygen. But back in the beginning, when the tobacco industry first started, they didn't use all these chemicals to make cigarettes that they make nowadays. And they say that if you go to the Indian reservation and buy their cigarettes, they're not near as cancer causing as the other ones because they still make theirs from natural ingredients.
Oh. Well, the other thing that's happening is that people, like lung cancer, it used to be a disease of people in their 80s and 90s. But in the last year, I've communicated with several men that were 40, 45 that had stage 4 lung cancer. And you're finding that with all the diseases, people are having heart attacks at a much younger age than they did in the past. And so I think some of it's environmental, but I think some of it also has to do with these growth hormones that are in our food that are making people mature.
The fast-paced life that we have to live now, but with all the stress that it brings on and the keeping up with the Smiths and the Jones.
Right, yeah.
It's gotten to be a real madhouse. I mean, there once was a time that, people would go out and work an 8-hour day, come home, spend time with their families, read books, listen to the radio, visit the neighbors. They'd all get together and make a quilt together or do a barn raising, what have you. But nowadays, everybody works 12 to 16-hour shifts because they can't pay their bills if they don't.
Right, yeah.
And then even now it's getting even worse because since Obamacare has come around, all the employers are sitting there saying, well, there's a clause in there that says anything over 40 hours, I had to supply medical care, and I don't want to do that. And they're wanting to give people 20 hours. So now not only do people have to work 16 hours a day, 16 hours a day, they're having to work more than one job in order to get the amount of hours they need to survive.
Right. But I read recently that a lot of this whole problem with people having to work so much harder started back in the Reagan years. I read this in the last week, that Reagan pushed for tax breaks for the wealthy, and that was the start, because it has continued since, that has been more and more tax breaks for the wealthy, and that has meant a much wider divide between the
rich and the poor.
And right. And I don't think we have much of a middle class anymore in this country. I think that, it's fast becoming the lower class and the wealthy.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Now, I'm noticing we got like 14 minutes left, and we strayed away from your book. And I'm glad we did it. I think the conversation got really fantastic and interesting and got really involved. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
But having said that, I don't want to rob you of a chance to tell people the things you want them to know about your book. And I'm not sure exactly which points you want to cover. So why don't we real quick go through that?
Okay. My book talks about what I did when I had lung cancer, and this was in 1974. And actually, the reason I was diagnosed was because I had a dream that told me to go for a chest X-ray. And I believe in dreams and pay attention to them, because I believe that this is one way that God speaks with us if we listen. And so I was diagnosed with lung cancer, and I ended up going to a physician in Vienna, Virginia, and he had a lot of success at the National Cancer Institute treating people with Laetrile, which was illegal at the time, and it's still not. Well, recently they raided a center in Oklahoma. The government raided because they were treating with Laetrile, so it's still not very well accepted by traditional medicine, because it is a very inexpensive cure for cancer. And I say cure from experience, because it's been 39 years and I never had a relapse. So I went to the physician, and he prescribed Laetrile. You have to take pancreatic enzymes with it to help soften the cancer cells. So I took Wobimogus as a pancreatic enzyme. And the theory of the Laetrile is that cancer is a nutritional deficiency, and that people need Laetrile. And so I used that. I used the pancreatic enzymes. I use zinc, which helps to carry the Laetrile to the cancer cells. I was on high-dose vitamin A, and by high dose, I mean I started at 300,000 international units a day for a week, and then went to 200,000, and then went to 50,000 for a year, and the recommended daily dose is 5,000. And the theory for the vitamin A is that vitamin A will help prevent normal cells from converting to cancer cells. I took several vitamin Bs. I took bromelain. I took yeast. I took calcium, magnesium. And the doctor put me on a diet that was very similar to a vegan diet today. It was 75% raw fruit and vegetables with some additional cooked. I could have nuts and grains, but no protein and no simple carbohydrates, so no cakes, pies, candy, ice cream. And all of these things have been pretty much validated by research over the last few years. Then I added prayer, meditation, visualization, affirmations. I tried to serve others. I tried to develop my patience, faith, forgiveness. And I went back to the doctor. Well, the alternative doctor never asked me to come back. So I went back to my general practitioner who had originally diagnosed, but I didn't tell him I was doing anything, and so he thought we were in a wait-and-see mode. And I went back every 6 months for a chest X-ray to see what the progress was, and after 2 years, he said he guessed he made the wrong diagnoses. And so my friend, who was professor of pediatrics when I taught at Duke University, said he wanted to see the x-rays, the lab, all of the tests I'd had. And so I collected everything, and I went to North Carolina, and he reviewed it, and he said it definitely was lung cancer. And at this point, he was the medical director for Blue Cross Blue Shield for the state of North Carolina. So he was the third person that had validated that it was lung cancer. So I know that natural things work. Since my book came out, I've heard from many, usually about 60 people a month, that have lung cancer and want to use the protocol that I used. And so one of the young men has put together a list of all of the things and where he bought them and how much they cost, etc. And so I am able to share that with people that are interested. And I usually, if people contact me and they have lung cancer, I usually send them the chapter from my book about what I did, so that if they want to use that, then they have that opportunity. So that's what I did. And then, as I say, there's chapters in the book by the other people on different ways to deal with lung cancer that have been very successful.
So a large part of the purpose of your book is to make information available to people that you hope will be useful in helping people overcome cancer that you know they're not likely to overcome in the hospital.
Right, right. One thing I found, and this has happened with two of the guys most recently, they were both stage 4 lung cancer, and both of them, it had metastasized to the bone. And the laetrile was working very effective with the lung, but both of them were having problems with their bones. And one of the men went out and was shoveling during a snowstorm in the further north of Virginia and broke the bone. And so he's to call me today at 4 o'clock to catch up on what's happening with him and what's happening with me. And so I'm looking forward to seeing, how he's doing with his arm. And the other one that was in touch with me, his brother, also was having a lot of pain in his arm, and they ended up going and having radiation just on the arm. But the laetrile and the pancreatic enzymes and all, again, were very effective as far as the lungs. But what seems to be the problem is when it goes into the bone.
Well, also, there was a man, used to be a radio show host, good friend of mine, named Patrick Cook, that had came down with cancer, and he did not want to go the medicinal route. And he was trying some of the methods you tried and some different, well, I say yours, I can't say exactly yours, but what I mean is holistic. He was trying alternative is what I mean. That's not necessarily your same methods, you know what I'm saying? But basically, I think what happened in his case, though, was it was too far advanced because he died within a week of the time that he told everybody in the public about it. So I'm assuming that he probably had it diagnosed when he was already close to dying. He probably had been sick for who knows how long and was, like me, attributing it to allergies and other things, in other words.
See, that's a problem, Royce, because lung cancer, usually you do not have symptoms until you're stage 3 or 4. And by that time, it's so advanced that it's more difficult to treat. It's usually when it metastasizes somewhere else that you start having symptoms. And so, I could see very easily that, he wouldn't live very long once he was diagnosed. And see, laetrile takes longer. I mean, it's more effective, but it takes longer than when you burn someone or you cut out.
So a key to this here is regular visits to your doctor so that they can periodically give you a chest x-ray and hopefully catch it early on.
I would think so, right, yeah. Although I don't believe in a lot of x-rays either.
Well, even your doctors don't believe in having a lot of them either. However, it seems like there's a certain benefit to at least knowing early about something like that. You just kind of have to space out how often you do it, in other words.
Well, I think that there's another key, too, and that is, build up your body. Because if your body is strong enough, your likelihood of getting cancer is diminished. So, eat the right diet. Eat right fruit and vegetables and grains and nuts. Don't eat a lot of the processed foods. There are certain herbs that you can take, like pomegranate. The research has shown that if you take pomegranate every day, it will prevent prostate cancer. And if you have prostate cancer, it will reduce the size of the tumor. So there's certain things that one can take, and I do a lot of this, like for your lungs, nettle is wonderful. Nettle will keep the mucus and all that stuff out of your lungs. It's very good. Most of the time now I'm not able to, now that I'm on the beta blocker and the blood thinner, but ordinarily I take something called Cranmax, which is comparable to 8 glasses of cranberry juice and 1 capsule. And women have known for years that when you take cranberry juice, it will, help with urinary tract infections. And so I take this to prevent urinary tract infections. So there's certain things that you can do. There's something that I take called host defense that builds up the immune system. Or colostrum will build up the immune system. So there's certain things that you can do that will build up the immune system, and then there's certain things you can take that will prevent cancers in certain sites. So I think there's a certain amount that individuals can do also.
Okay, I'm glad you said all of that. In fact, I'm supposed to be getting a colonoscopy to see if I got colon cancer, but so far they haven't made the appointment. Well, they made one, but it got canceled by my disease doctor, and they haven't remade another one. Is there anything I could do that's good for that, to get rid of it?
Well, there was something I read last week, but I can't remember. I review all the research every week, and so I don't remember. But if you go on my website, and this is the holistichealthshow.com site, and you put in colon cancer, it will pull up the research that will tell you what you can take that has shown to be effective in reducing the chances of getting colon cancer. I can't remember. I don't think it was grapeseed, because I know grapeseed, I just read this week, has been effective in reducing the probability of ovarian cancer. But I put all of that on my Holistic Health Show website, and I know it was not this past week, but the week before, and so you can find that specific one, but there may be others from the past. I'm in the process of setting up a cancer foundation, and when I do that, I will have someone separate all of the research on natural ways by the cancer site, so that on that website I'll have colon, and then I'll have all the natural things as far as research, so that people will be able to access it a little bit easier than they can on my Holistic Health Show site.
Well, I'd like to have you keep me up to date of the things you have going on, if you don't mind, so that, well, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to want to call you back on my show from time to time to update my listeners, because you got some very useful information, and, well, humanity needs to hear it.
Thank you, Russ. I appreciate that, and as you said earlier, my goal in all of this is just to get the information out to people so that when they're faced with a cancer diagnosis, they know that there are alternatives and that they can then make the decision that is right for them. And maybe chemotherapy is right for someone. My brother died last year, and he had lung cancer also. He was 91 years old. And he decided he wanted to do the chemo because he had a lot of faith in his doctor, and so some people will choose that. I mean, it wasn't the right choice because it wasn't very long that he died, and I think that he would have lived a little longer.
Well, it wasn't the best choice overall for the cancer, but it was the best choice for him.
Right. Because
everybody has to make their own choice, but I see what you're getting at. You just want people to have choices out there. You want them to be able to make an informed decision.
Right, definitely.
I mean, you don't want them going there saying, well, I hate chemo, but what are the choices? There's this. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't, don't.
Them. When they go to the traditional doctor, he's going to say, well, your choice is chemo and surgery. He's not going to say, well, there's Laetrile, there's poly-MVA, there's insulin potentiation therapy. He's not going to give them these other choices. So I think people need to know there's a whole gamut of interventions. Some of them are invasive, some are not. Some of them work slower than others. But if they have all that information, then they can decide, well, this is what I want to do.
Well, also there's a teaching in the medical community that holistic healing is pseudoscience, in other words, and it's non-productive. And, even doctors that would recommend holistic healing, if they knew of it being successful, they don't know of it being successful because they're taught through the training years, the college years, that it's not. So they know what they've been taught in a classroom.
Right.
And naturally, I think the classrooms are getting their funding from the pharmaceuticals, if not from the students themselves. And the students don't know anything better, and the pharmaceuticals sure ain't going to teach anything better.
Right, definitely.
No money in that. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry makes a huge amount of money. I mean, probably more than the oil industry makes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Right.
People need to be aware also that even the people that care about you the most, there's a greed factor involved, and if you don't consider it, the people who are treating you probably have.
Right.
Let's take it all into consideration, and I show that it's 2 after the hour. We've already overridden. I don't want to hold you up, at least not right now.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show, but I have something I want to mention to you after the show that I'm hoping and thinking you might be interested in. I want to say to everybody that's listening to the show, I don't care if it's at YouTube or Daily Motion in my archive, if you heard it live, if you listen, you participated, I want to thank you for it. I couldn't have a show without listeners any more than I could have one without a guest. Everybody works together to make everything work. With that, I'm going to let everybody know that you can get to more information about him at www.beatlungcancer.net. And what was that other URL about holistic healing?
HolisticHealthShow.com.
HolisticHealthShow.com. Come back and see me this Wednesday at 7 p.m. My guest is going to be Paul Davids, the guy who directed some of the Transformer movies. And we're going to be talking about the Life After Death Project. And then you could come back and see me Thursday over at Revolution Radio. My guest is going to be Karen Tate. And her book is called Goddess Calling. It's about the feminine principle that has been put on the back burner for all the years. She wants to bring it back to the front burner for people that aren't very familiar with it. And then my guest this next Saturday is going to be Janice Carlson. Her book is Soul Sensing, and I'm pretty sure it's similar to Karen Tate's. I think there's a lot to be gained from listening to both of these women. I think when you have a male-oriented religion, that it's like making spaghetti without making the sauce. There's only half of it there. We're in a world of duality. Surely there has to be a feminine and a masculine principle. That's just my personal take. Y'all can listen in and make your own decision. I'm with Carl Helvie on this one here. I'm not here to tell people how to think, what to decide, what to believe. I'm here to provide information. What you think and what you make out of it, you're going to have to do. I just want to be able to help people make an informed decision. So, folks, with that, I hope to see you Wednesday at 7. Y'all have a good day, and y'all have a good weekend, and we'll talk at you later.